39. Poets.
Poets is another pivotal chapter in the book. Let's dive straight into it and see where it takes us.
Since I have known the body better, said Zarathustra to one of his disciples, the spirit hath only been to me symbolically spirit, and all the imperishable. That is also but a simile. So have I heard thee say once before, answered the disciple, and then thou addedst, but the poets lie too much. Why didst thou say that the poets lie too much?
This chapter opens with Zarathustra repeating two ideas that he already spake before. One is the idea that the spirit is not an entity, but merely a name we give to some of the powers of our body. He made this point in The Despisers of the Body. This leads straight to the second idea, since those who believe that the spirit is an entity usually also believe that it is unchangeable and eternal. But if it belongs to the body, it perishes with it, and actually there is nothing eternal, and everything perishes. The imperishable is merely a simile that exists as an idea in our culture, but has no equivalent in reality. He made this point in The Happy Isles. One of his disciples points out that he already said this, and also that when he said that the imperishable is but a simile, he added that the poets lie too much. He wonders why he said this, showing that he is not well versed in German literature. Zarathustra was paraphrasing the famous line from Goethe's Faust, "All perishable is but an allegory." The line expresses a traditional view in Western culture, which regards only the eternal as true, only the imperishable as having value. Zarathustra, who is all about deifying earthly life, with its ever-changing cycles of birth and death, rejects this idea. He turns the Faustian line on its head, and warns us that poets like Goethe are not to be believed.
Why, said Zarathustra, thou askest why. I do not belong to those who may be asked after their why. Is my experience but of yesterday? It is long ago that I experienced the reasons for mine opinions. Should I not have to be a cask of memory if I also wanted to have my reasons with me? It is already too much for me even to retain mine opinions, and many a bird flieth away. And sometimes also do I find a fugitive creature in my dovecote, which is alien to me, and trembleth when I lay my hand upon it.
Zarathustra doesn't answer the disciple. Instead, he goes on a rant about how his opinions change, and he cannot be held accountable for something he said in the past. We get the impression that his views might have changed since he said that line. Remember, since then we saw him go through a crisis, and overcoming it by self-surpassing. A self-surpassing entails a change in worldview, which means that some of his views changed. But what was the nature of the change?
But what did Zarathustra once say unto thee? That the poets lie too much. But Zarathustra also is a poet. Believest thou that he there spake the truth? Why dost thou believe it?
In yet another twist, Zarathustra hints that when he said that poets lie too much, he wasn't talking about Goethe, but about himself. This reveals that he may have changed his mind, and perhaps he does believe now that there is something that is imperishable.
The disciple answered, I believe in Zarathustra. But Zarathustra shook his head and smiled. Belief doth not sanctify me, said he, least of all the belief in myself. But granting that someone did say in all seriousness that the poets lie too much, he was right. We do lie too much. We also know too little, and are bad learners, so we are obliged to lie. And which of us poets hath not adulterated his wine? Many a poisonous hotchpotch hath evolved in our cellars. Many an indescribable thing hath there been done.
Zarathustra refers to himself as a poet. When did he become a poet? His rhetoric was always poetic, but we never saw him sing actual songs before he went through the crisis of self-doubt. The crisis made him turn to poetry, and the poetry helped him find a way out. But now, it seems that he is doubting himself again, doubting his poetic tongue. It appears that he is on the cusp of yet another crisis.
And because we know little, therefore we are pleased from the heart with the poor in spirit, especially when they are young women. And even of those things we are desirous, which old women tell one another in the evening. This do we call the eternally feminine in us. And as if there were a special secret access to knowledge, which choketh up for those who learn anything, so do we believe in the people and in their wisdom.
Zarathustra continues to speak for poets, and equates them to women. As we know, women for him are those who remain on the surface of things, connect to the ever-changing reality on an emotional level, and don't try to dig deep and find the more stable rules governing it. The poets, he says, actually believe that if you try to dig for the truth, your access to knowledge becomes blocked thereby. I believe he is referring to what is known as inspiration, that thing that descends upon poets and makes them express the kind of knowledge that goes beyond reason. According to him, poets believe that if you develop the rational side of your brain, it shuts down the part that is capable of receiving inspiration.
This, however, do all poets believe, that whoever pricketh up his ears when lying in the grass, or on lonely slopes, learneth something of the things that are betwixt heaven and earth. And if there come unto them tender emotions, then do the poets always think that nature herself is in love with them, and that she stealeth to their ear to whisper secrets into it, and amorous flatteries. Of this do they plume and pride themselves before all mortals. Ah, there are so many things betwixt heaven and earth of which only the poets have dreamed, and especially above the heavens, for all gods are poet symbolizations, poet sophistications.
Continuing the same idea, here he uses Shakespeare to make the point, paraphrasing Hamlet's famous quote that there are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in philosophy. Philosophy, the attempt to use reason to understand reality, isn't enough, believe the poets. We heard Zarathustra saying similar things in the chapter Self-Surpassing, when he accused philosophers of trying to make everything thinkable. The poets believe that we have other faculties, besides reason, that are capable of grasping things that reason cannot. But here, Zarathustra says that these things are not something that the poets discover through inspiration, but something they invent in their imagination. They invent things about the physical world that aren't there, and even more so, they invent things about the metaphysical world that aren't there. They are, in short, liars.
Verily, ever are we drawn aloft, that is, to the realm of the clouds. On these do we set our gaudy puppets, and then call them gods and supermen. Are not they light enough for those chairs, all these gods and supermen? Ah, how I am weary of all the inadequate that is insisted on as actual. Ah, how I am weary of the poets.
Yes, even his own Superman, he now says, is nothing but something he conjured up in his imagination. He is definitely having self-doubts again.
When Zarathustra so spake, his disciple resented it, but was silent. And Zarathustra also was silent, and his eye directed itself inwardly, as if it gazed into the far distance. At last he sighed and drew breath. I am of today, and heretofore, said he thereupon. But something is in me that is of the morrow, and the day following, and the hereafter. I became weary of the poets, of the old and of the new. Superficial are they all unto me, and shallow seas. They did not think sufficiently into the depth, therefore their feeling did not reach to the bottom.
When he overcame his previous crisis, he did so by committing himself to the ever-changing reality, which the ethics of self-surpassing was supposed to finally connect him to. He went the way of poets, not trying to dig deep for any stable truths. But now he feels that this was insufficient. There is something in him that wants to go deeper, and poetry alone will not suffice.
Some sensation of voluptuousness and some sensation of tedium, these have as yet been their best contemplation. Ghost breathing and ghost whisking seemeth to me all the jingle-jangling of their harps. What have they known hitherto of the fervour of tones? They are also not pure enough for me. They all muddle their water that it may seem deep. And fain would they thereby prove themselves reconcilers. But mediaries and mixers are they unto me, and half, and impure.
Zarathustra still believes that the right way of life should be in tune with the changes of reality. His problem with the poets is that they connect to it only on the emotional level, not on an intellectual level. This makes them shallow, even if they manage to obscure it with their beautiful and bewildering tongue.
Ah, I cast indeed my net into their sea, and meant to catch good fish, but always did I draw up the head of some ancient god. Thus did the sea give a stone to the hungry one, and they themselves may well originate from the sea. Certainly one findeth pearls in them. Thereby they are the more like hard mollusks, and instead of a soul, I have often found in them salt slime.
Any attempt to find anything deep in the writings of poets, says Zarathustra, only produces some old god. In other words, it isn't some original insight about reality, but an old metaphysical idea dressed in new poetic tongue. He admits to find the occasional pearl in their poems, but nothing of real value. He mentions that the poets are from the sea, that is, from the chaos of becoming, but while he is trying to find something substantial in this chaos, they remain fluid.
They have learned from the sea also its vanity. Is not the sea the peacock of peacocks? Even before the ugliest of all buffaloes doth it spread out its tail. Never doth it tire of its lace fan of silver and silk. Disdainfully doth the buffalo glance thereat, nigh to the sand with its soul, nigher still to the thicket, nighest, however, to the swamp. What is beauty and sea and peacock splendour to it? This parable I speak unto the poets. Verily their spirit itself is the peacock of peacocks, and a sea of vanity. Spectators seeketh the spirit of the poet, should they even be buffaloes.
More animal metaphors. The buffalo seems to be someone who cannot appreciate beauty, and does not know how to deal with the sea of becoming. He needs something other than poetry, but the poets can offer him nothing else. It shows that they are not really after knowledge, but are just trying to impress.
But of this spirit became I weary, and I see the time coming when it will become weary of itself. Yea, changed have I seen the poets, and their glance turned towards themselves. Penitence of the spirit have I seen appearing, they grew out of the poets. Thus spake Zarathustra.
The poets, says Zarathustra, are no longer even trying to represent the truth found in reality. Perhaps he is reacting to the rise of modernist poetry, happening around that time. They are now looking inwards, and are gradually turning into penitents of the spirit. We heard him use this term to describe what he called the sublime ones, those who try to transcend earthly life. Poetry, then, is going in the opposite direction of where he wants to go. He used poetry to overcome the previous crisis. Now, he'll have to find something else.